All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to unpack a concept that quietly shapes our entire economic world: price elasticity of supply. Let's dive right in. So let's kick things off with a mystery, one you've probably felt right in your own wallet. You know the feeling, right? Some crisis happens halfway around the world, and all of a sudden the price you pay at the gas pump just shoots through the roof. But the price of, I don't know, muffins or t-shirts, they might not move at all. So what's actually going on there?
Well, the whole secret, the answer to that mystery, it all comes down to responsiveness. It's about how quickly producers can actually change how much of something they're making when the price changes. And of course, economists have a name for this.
It's called price elasticity of supply, or just PES for short. And this is the key that unlocks why some markets go totally wild while others seem pretty stable. So how do we actually measure this stretchiness? So let's get into the nitty-gritty. How do we put a number on this whole stretchiness idea?
Okay, so here's the formula. Now, I know it might look a little academic, but the idea behind it is actually super simple. It's just a ratio. You take the percentage change in the amount of stuff being supplied, and you divide it by the percentage change in the price that made it happen.
And here's an even easier way to think about it. The PES number tells you exactly what percentage supply will change for every 1% change in price. So if the PES is, say, 2, that just means for a 1% price increase, suppliers can crank out 2% more product. It's that simple.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because that number you get from the formula, it tells a story. If the PES score is greater than 1, we call the supply elastic. Think of a rubber band. It's super responsive and can stretch easily. If it's less than 1, it's inelastic. Think of a steel rod. Supply is rigid, doesn't really budge. A score of exactly 1 means it's unit elastic, a perfect one-to-one change. And if it's 0, that's perfectly inelastic. The supply is completely fixed, like the number of original paintings by Van Gogh in the world. Okay, enough with the numbers for a second. To make this really click, let's tell a little story, a tale of two different producers.
All right, on one side, we've got a muffin baker. Let's say muffin prices suddenly shoot up. What can she do? Well, pretty quickly, she can order more flour, maybe call in an extra baker, and boom, more muffins hit the shelves. Her supply is elastic. But on the other side, we've got an avocado farmer. Avocado toast is the next big thing. Prices are through the roof. Can he just grow more avocados overnight? No way. It takes years for a new tree to produce fruit. His supply is inelastic. And this is exactly how economists draw this out. Look at the baker on the left. Her supply curve is flatter. A small price change leads to a big jump in how many muffins she can make. Now look at the farmer. His curve is super steep. Even a massive price hike doesn't change his output much, at least not in the short term. So that leads to the next question. What makes a business more like the baker or more like the farmer?
Right, so what actually determines this stretchiness? Let's break down the key factors that are at play.
There are a few big ones. First, time to respond. We've already touched on this. How fast can you really ramp up production? Then there's spare capacity. Are there factories just sitting there ready to be turned on? Level of stocks is a big one. Are there warehouses just full of the product ready to ship? You also have to think about factor mobility. How easily can you move workers and machines from making one thing to making this thing? And finally, of course, the availability of raw materials. Can you even get the stuff you need to make more?
So out of all of those, there's one that really stands out as the most crucial, and that's time. Pretty much any product supply will get more elastic. You just have to give it enough time.
Let's look at a real-world example: cotton. In the short run, its price elasticity is about 0.3. That is very inelastic. Why? Well, if cotton prices spike in the middle of the growing season, a farmer can't just snap their fingers and plant more. They're locked in for that year. But give that same farmer a year or more, and look what happens. The long-run elasticity jumps to 1.0. That's unit elastic. Now that farmer can plan ahead, dedicate more fields to cotton, maybe even buy a new harvester. He can fully respond to that price change. See? Time completely changes the game. Okay, so we've got the theory down. We've looked at the numbers. But why should you care about any of this? Well, because this isn't just a textbook concept. It has massive, real-world impacts on a global scale. You've got huge organizations like the World Bank that pour enormous amounts of energy into studying these markets, and it's all because of supply elasticity. For a lot of developing nations, their entire economy hangs in the balance. And here's why it's so critical. Just listen to this quote from a World Bank report. For commodity exporting countries, price declines significantly reduce their growth, sometimes for several years. That is a huge deal. Think about it. If you're a country that sells a product with inelastic supply and the price crashes, you can't just pivot and start making something else. You're stuck.
And that's really the key takeaway here. If a country's entire economy depends on exporting just one or two things with inelastic supply, we're talking oil, natural gas, coffee beans, they are incredibly vulnerable. They're basically riding a roller coaster of global price shocks, which can lead to these huge boom and bust cycles that can throw their whole society into chaos.
So that brings us to one final, really important question for all of us. As we start this massive shift towards green energy, which, by the way, needs way more metals like lithium and copper, how is the elasticity of those metals going to shape our future? I mean, based on what we've just talked about, figuring out if that supply is stretchy or rigid, well, it's not just some academic puzzle. It's going to have a direct impact on energy prices, on global politics, and on how fast we can actually make this green transition happen. It's definitely something to think about.